Hey everybody, Zip here. I've got a review for you of the KMS Tirpitz German Tier 8 Premium Battleship. A lot of people have been waiting for this one. It's an expensive ship. Let's get right into it here and we'll go over what this ship is all about. First off, this ship is nice to look at. It's a nice design. I've always admired this design. So let's take a look at the guns. This ship's primary armament is her 4 turrets, 2 barrels each of 380mm caliber guns. 380mm is on the small side for Tier 8. It's definitely not up to the same level as her contemporaries, but we'll get more into what that's all about in a little bit. The range on these guns is 14 kilometers with the premium camo, and that's pretty decent and competitive. Dispersion at that range, well, we'll get to that as well. The reload is 20 seconds if you equip the ship with the reload boost equipment and supply out the 3% boost to reload speed. You can get it down to 20-second reload, which at this caliber, I think you have to make up for the smaller caliber with more shots, as many shots as you can per minute. The high explosive is got a 9% chance for fire, which I think is low. It should be around 12%. I think 12% is the correct number there. It's just 9% seems low, and the battles I've played with it so far, I've left 2 ships on fire. That's it for a lot of HE shots. So I think that maybe it's just random numbers, but it's a little bit on the light side, I find, for the fire starting. Her secondaries are a pretty good addition to the mix. She's got 6 turrets with 2 barrels each, so 12 guns. The caliber is 150mm, which is very workable, gives decent range. The accuracy on these secondaries is nowhere near those on the Scharnhorst, which is very disappointing. I was expecting the same kind of accuracy as the Scharnhorst's secondaries, but the reload is 8.2 seconds. It's not the greatest either. The range is 7.3 kilometers, which is decent and workable. So I'd say the secondaries are kind of meh. They need to be more accurate, basically, in my opinion. This ship's going to be using her secondaries a lot against destroyers, fast-moving destroyers. The accuracy is not sufficient to protect the ship from destroyers. So definitely needs an accuracy improvement, in my opinion. Whether we'll ever see one, probably not, but you never know. I'll discuss that a little bit more when we get into the equipment section of this review. Now on to the torpedoes. Like the Scharnhorst, this ship has torpedoes. It's a battleship with torpedoes. It's pretty cool. They're very useful for self-defense from destroyers. They have about 3,000 damage, which is pretty good. 48-second reload, which is great. And the range is 5.6 kilometers, which is decent as well. So these are all positives. I'd say there's nothing wrong with the torpedoes. That's A-okay. But I'd like to see improvement on the accuracy for the secondaries and improvement on the fire chance for the mains. But no complaints about the torpedoes. Torpedoes are A-okay. And the improvements on the guns, well, some people will argue balance, but I really think that the ship, to be balanced for the average player, needs those 2 improvements. Moving on to the other aspects of this ship. Well, first off, we're going to take a look at this camo. I love the camo on this ship. It's nice looking. It is a different pattern from the right to the left side. I'll show you the other side in a little bit. The elite ship bonus, I've gone with damage reduction and citadel protection. You could easily go with torpedo damage reduction. I don't really think there's one that's better than the other. I went with the first one because it's improving 2 areas. The torpedo damage reduction would also be, but remember it's off the base, so it doesn't really do as much as you would think. Now the camo gives you extra hit points and range improvements on the mains, secondaries, and torpedoes, plus a 30% experience bonus. Her skills are precise aiming and sonar 2, which is pretty useful, as you'll see in the upcoming battles. For supplies, I'm running reload boost, hit point boost and the speed boost, which in my opinion is the most important one because it also improves the traverse. This ship is a little bit on the sluggish side, definitely slow to accelerate and slow to traverse and start her turn. She does turn pretty well once she gets going, but she takes some time to get there. So the hit points as well, in my opinion, gives her the best survivability. You could go to the AA improvement. However, that only works when there's an aircraft carrier in the battle. So I prefer improvements that work all the time. For equipment, in the first slot, I've gone with the reload boost to knock down the reload from 21 point something to 20 seconds. I strongly considered the dispersion reduction, and I still may go with that option instead. I'm only about 12 to 15 battles in with the ship. Normally I like to get a few more before I do a review, but in this case here, I really don't think there's a bad answer here. You could go reload, you could go traverse, you could go dispersion, you could even go secondary reload boost, and you can even go secondary range and accuracy boost. So these are all viable options on this ship. So in that sense, she's quite versatile in terms of the way you want to outfit her. Definitely, I do think that here there's in the middle slot there's only a couple of options. You've got the acceleration because she's extremely slow to accelerate, taking about 30 seconds to accelerate, like base values. I went with the traverse because she needs to be able to turn to dodge torpedoes, and I considered going with the speed here, but again I decided she was so sluggish to start her turns that she needed the traverse acceleration, and I'm happy I've gone with that. The only one I might change up is the primary slot, where I might go to the dispersion reduction. I think it's that or reload for my personal play style. I'll probably go to the dispersion reduction. I find that there's too many shells missing at range, so I'll almost certainly do that at some point. I just want to get to about 30 battles or so the way she's configured right now before I throw that silver away, because you lose so much silver by changing equipment. Getting into our first battle here, the Tirpitz is quite capable fighter, and in my opinion she's best played on a team with two other players that you know well and that can perform well. The reason for this is that this ship, faced with multiple battleships, will have a hard time on her own. Just because of the lower caliber, she will score low damage or no damage on battleships if they're facing the right way. So definitely a little bit of an uphill battle at range. If you close in, you can get your secondaries in the mix, but they usually return zeros. You can get your torpedoes in the mix, and they're very, very effective at knocking down battleships, but you will take severe damage, mostly because the contemporary battleships to this ship at tier 8 have 16-inch guns, and their armor is better able to deal with 16-inch guns, and your guns are 15-inch, and you won't do quite as much damage. In fact, you'll do considerably less damage, as well as your armor scheme is designed more to repel 14-inch guns, and to a lesser degree 15-inch guns. So tier 8 battleships will kind of cut through you a little bit, so do keep that in mind when you're making that call whether or not you want to approach and use your torpedoes or stand off and use high explosive to whittle away at a red battleship. Tirpitz's primary purpose will be, in most battles, to take out cruisers and destroyers. She's better able to deal with cruisers than destroyers because her main guns won't traverse quite quickly enough to keep up with many destroyers. You have to turn the ship at the same time. When they do hit, though, they do hit hard, as you saw there. And you can take down destroyers along with cruisers pretty quickly if you're shooting accurately. So all in all, against cruisers and destroyers, this ship is sufficiently powerful, sufficiently good. Against battleships, that's where it's much easier if you're on a team versus playing solo. If you're like me and you play most of your battles solo, then when you encounter ships like the Colorado, the North Carolina, you're going to struggle a little bit at taking those out. And if you're low tier in a tier 9 match, which I have done a couple of times now, The Iowa is your nemesis, and an Iowa-class battleship will wreck you pretty quickly. So definitely when you're playing low tier, high explosive, stay at range, use islands if you can, and sneak up and throw some torps in. You can turn pretty well once you get going, so you can actually swing around and drop 2 loads of torps onto a larger battleship, but you will get spanked, for lack of a better term, when you do so. If there's an aware player or a bot player, they will take a good chunk of your health away from you when you move in close to do those tactics. So do be aware of that. When possible, try to team up. If you're playing solo, play the distance game, play high explosive game against battleships. It's your best bet. That being said, playing that way usually leads to defeat by points sometimes, because you're trying to maintain a distance instead of closing in, so it takes longer to finish somebody off. And you're probably going to find that, again, playing solo, you're going to have a little bit more losses than if you're playing on a team with the ship. Not because the ship is bad per se, just because the realities are, if you want to survive so later in the game, if you want to contribute more, you have to survive. And when you're trying to survive against higher tier opponents, you're going to play conservative. That's the only way you're going to pull that off. Of course, if you're playing a high tier game against bots, that's a little bit easier and the ship will fare quite well there. But against humans running in tier 9 battleships, you should proceed with caution. That doesn't mean run away. That doesn't mean, run and hide. Don't hide, fight, but don't do anything dumb. Do your best to play a game of the style that they'll miss their shots while you're landing yours. Use the ship's turning ability to help facilitate that. You can see here as well that I really think that the secondary accuracy should be a bit better on the ship, mostly because Scharnhorst has more accurate guns than the ship. That being said, it's not horrible, and the ship having torpedoes does make it so that she's competitive and can defend herself. However, without high explosive, I think a little bit more accuracy would be in order. Personal opinion, but any sort of improvement like that is going to make the ship genuinely overpowered when she's in a team or when she's being played by a super skilled player. Most ships are overpowered when in the hands of super skilled players, so it's not really that different. But I think that for the average player, a boost to secondary accuracy is in order. That or high explosives increase the fire chance to even 10% would be beneficial. So over the 9%. But I'd like to see 12. 11 is cool. 10 would be okay. 9 I think is just a little bit on the small side for 380 millimeters, when the ship is going to have a hard time penetrating all the other battleships in its tier. Certainly a tier 7 battleship is going to be a little bit easier to penetrate. However, that being said, you still have the Colorado, which is going to be designed to withstand 15 and 16 inch guns, and you're going to have a hard time penetrating, and she can still wreck you pretty good even though she's a tier down. So gun wise, armor wise, I think that improving the fire chance off of the guns on this ship would again help her face contemporary battleships. Again, the ship's primary role should always be hunting cruisers and destroyers. That being said, the reality is, playing solo, you're going to go up against battleships. Solo, on your own, you need something a little bit better. So this ship is definitely value for money, better for players who play often on teams. Solo players, this may not be quite as good of a purchase in terms of your win rate. The contemporary tech tree battleships will fare you better at tier 8 than the ship will. Certainly the North Carolina is a more powerful ship. The Tirpitz is very fun and the uniqueness of the, again, mains, secondaries, and torpedoes is a lot of fun in the playstyle. Scharnhorst is the same way. So keep that in mind before you drop your money on this. If you play a lot in teams, really, and you're considering the ship, you won't be disappointed. If you are forced through circumstances to play mostly solo, such as myself, then the ship, you won't have as fun of a time all the time playing it, because it can be frustrating when you've got a team that pretty much evaporates on you, and then it's you versus 3 or 4 battleships. That's not too fun, but that's just the way it is with a lot of ships in game anyway, so it's neither here nor there. I'm just letting you know that that is a possibility, so make your own mind up with respect to whether or not that's acceptable to you. The other aspects of premium vehicles in wargaming titles, of course, is the silver earning potential. In World of Warships Blitz, we still have in my opinion, a broken economy that needs a lot of work. And because of that, I can't really comment too far into the silver earning potential of this ship. I can tell you that so far in my battles, I've been kind of not impressed with the silver earning. I was expecting a little bit more because it is a tier 8 premium. Going by the Prince Eugen, I earn like crazy in that ship with silver boosters. She'll earn more than any other ship in the game. I was expecting the same from this ship, but in my high damage battles I've had with her, comparing them to Prince Eugen battles about the same damage, she definitely earns less. And part of that, I think, is because the number of shots on target will be fewer. And that's one of the things that we believe at this point, we haven't been told for sure, that increases your credit earning is number of shots on target. So getting a lot more shots in, which you can with the faster firing guns on the Prince Eugen, means that you're going to earn more silver with it. So that's just an observation. I'm not that far into this ship in terms of number of battles, so I may add in the comments later on that actually she does earn quite well, but well is a relative term. Well in a broken economy is still not that great. So anyway, treat that information as it is. It's an assessment that is preliminary, and she seems to be less than she should for credit earning. But quite frankly, that doesn't bother me too much. The reason to buy this ship is because of her historical significance, the look of the ship, and the fact that because of her lower caliber, because of her uniqueness, she's a little bit more challenging to play when playing solo. So I do kind of actually like that aspect of the ship. But I think that the average player who's looking to buy this ship will probably not be as appreciative of those things as I am. I can't assume that they would, so I do have to mention these things. That's why I'm saying things the way I am. But if this ship was no longer in my account tomorrow, I would rebuy it in a second, because I do enjoy the ship. And certainly for the historical significance, really it's a ship that people have long looked at in awe over the look and design of this ship. It is a very handsome ship, so definitely that is part of the reason to buy this ship, combined with the uniqueness of the playstyle. The last thing here I want to talk about is kind of a little bit of a disclaimer with respect to premium ships in World of Warships Blitz. Recently, with the last update, we had 2 premium ships balanced. One was nerfed, the other one was buffed in one area and nerfed in another area. And I wanted to mention it here because traditionally in other wargaming titles, premium ships were not ever reduced in capability. They were certainly buffed in capability as necessary to keep them viable and competitive, kind of like a manufacturer's warranty. But now we have a situation where 2 ships have been adjusted. One, you can even make the argument that the Huang He was balanced to a slightly different slanting in terms of she got a 1 second faster reload speed, but lost a little bit of her damage potential. Overall, Basically, she gained 1 salvo every 7 versus losing a little bit of damage on every single salvo that lands. On a ship that has 6 barrels, I'd say that's a little bit more of a nerf than a buff, but anyway, we'll call it even on that one. And then the Yubari was a couple of seconds were knocked off on her torp reload, which is clearly a nerf. It is a balance move, and balance can be a good thing. And we have to trust Wargaming here a little bit. I don't think they would make changes on a ship to the point where it completely changed or ruined a ship. So I don't think we have to worry about that. But do be aware, if you buy this ship or any other premium based on my reviews, please remember, I'm going to put a written disclaimer on all my previous reviews as well, that the actual specifications of the ship that you might see in game are subject to change by Wargaming. So again, buyer beware. If it's going to bother you, if they shave off a second here or there on the reload, make it longer, something like that on a ship, any premium ship, if that's going to bother you, please don't get angry with me. It's things are subject to change. So I'll try to update reviews or annotate reviews as things are balanced or adjusted, both positively and negatively, and I'll try to update that for you guys. But I'll leave you guys with that, and I'm really not too concerned about it, but at the same time, I'm going to keep my eyes on how that develops. Now here for this battle, I'm going to stop talking so you guys can just watch the battle. This is a battle that my team should have lost. They fought pretty well, but really the red team should have got us here. We won by one of the slimmest of margins I've ever won any battle, and so I hope you enjoy this nail biter. What's important, the reason why I really wanted this battle to be in here, is that this is a battle where the Tirpitz is going to go head-to-head with a pretty decently powered battleship. I mean, it's a tier down, but in terms of armor protection and guns, she is a match for the Tirpitz. So it is a fair fight, and you can get an appreciation of what it's like to go toe-to-toe with a battleship in this ship. And it's an important consideration because when you have to carry, odds are you will be facing these types of battles. So do take a look at that. I'm going to leave you here. It's past 1 o'clock in the morning. I have to get up in about 5 hours, and so I'm going to sign off here. So thank you for watching. Cheers.
Nice shot! We're under attack! We're hit! Enemy team captured the area. Good job! We're under attack! We're under attack! The ship is on fire! Enemy heavily damaged! We're hit! We're under attack! Target hit! Enemy team is about to win. Nice shot! The ship is on fire! Destroyed an enemy ship. Enemy team captured the area.